Cool. Thank you for your encouragement. Always nice. So, Phil said, my name's Bruce. I'm one of the leadership team here. And I'm continuing our series on overflow. How God has overflowed to us and overflows from us to the community around us. And this morning we're looking at the subject of time. I don't know that I've heard anyone speak about that before. So I've kind of got nothing to fall back on. Start from first principles, I guess. But it's kind of important, really, isn't it? Time. If we didn't have time, we couldn't do anything. And time is one of those things that God has given us. God has given us time. Now, I wonder what you think. I say to you, God has given us time. You probably think, oh, God has given us a lifetime. He's given us hours, years, hopefully. And that's true, and that's wonderful. That's not what I mean. What I mean is God has given us time, the thing itself, okay? We live in a four-dimensional space-time universe, right? 3 dimensions of space, forwards, backwards, up, down, sideways, however you look at it, X, Y, Z. And you move probably through all dimensions of space just coming here this morning. You probably went down a step or two from your home, maybe some stairs, a lift, I don't know. And you turned left and you turned right and you followed your own route at your own pace and you arrived here somehow. That happened in time. Okay? Time is different. We only have one dimension of time. And Einstein has demonstrated, and it's been proved scientifically, that time is part of the fabric of this physical universe that we live in. It's that the time as we experience it isn't like a universal, all-time thing that's always been there. It is part of this universe that had a beginning. And the thing that's different about time, there's only one dimension. You can only go through it one way, and you can only go forwards. You can never go back. We go through time in one dimension from yesterday, the past, through today, to the future, and we go through at the rate of exactly 1 hour per hour, unless you can travel at something approaching the speed of light. That's how it works. That is incredibly significant and important in a number of ways, and you are looking a little bit stunned, and I'm not surprised. We never think about this, but because time is linear, and because it's unidirectional, it only flows in one direction, you can have a sequence of events. If that wasn't the case, you couldn't have a sequence of events. Events would be scattered. And an event can build on event. Because we have time, because time is the way it is in this universe, your builder can lay a foundation in the ground and he can come back tomorrow and it's still there and he can build walls on it. And after he's built the walls are still there and he can put in a floor and a roof. And when he comes back again, the floor and the roof are still there and he can put in doors and windows. And that's why you have somewhere to live. Because time is the way time is. Okay? The way time is, I can take some edible things and I can prepare them and cook them in a certain way and I have a plate of delicious food in front of me and that food's not going anywhere. It's not going to mysteriously vanish. It's not going to strangely change its taste into something obnoxious. It is there for me to eat until I've lapped it all up and I'm full because God has given us a thing that we call time. It's a remarkable thing. Because there is time, and because I studied, and because I revised, and because I answered some questions and got enough of them right, I have this piece of paper that says I have these qualifications, and that is with me for the rest of my life. Because time is linear, that's never taken away from me. Imagine your prankster friend who likes playing tricks on people. Imagine now if he could go back in time. Imagine the chaos that could be caused if people could... Imagine if Donald Trump could go back in time. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Time is a wonderful thing, and it's something that has overflowed to us from God through this universe that He has created. And it is true also that He has given us time within that time, each of us, a life to live and a period of time in which to live it, and that is a gift from Him. But God did more than that. God overflowed in another way. God, who lives outside time. This space-time universe, God created it. So he's not restricted inside it as we are. He doesn't live just within it. He lives above and beyond it, not just outside of our space, but outside of our time. And so when Jesus came as a man, God came as a man in Jesus, he didn't just restrict himself to the 3 dimensions of our physical universe. He restricted himself to our time. He came to reconcile us to himself, to put right the relationship that mankind should have had, but broke through our rebellion against him and going our own way and exploring all sorts of different things that seemed more attractive than God. God came to put that right, and he gave himself 1 lifetime in which to do it. Actually, about half a lifetime, because Jesus probably died at the age of 33, certainly no more than 40. God became part of our universe. He restricted himself to the same time frame that we get in which to live. That is beyond imagining what it must have been like for Jesus. And Jesus came, and the immortal, the all-knowing God came, and he went to school. And he learned, and he went through that sequential process of learning. Jesus, who, God in Jesus being the author of the whole Old Testament, Jesus sat down and learned it by heart, to recite it by heart. He took on all of those limitations. He identified entirely and completely with us. And he set aside not just infinity, but eternity, and came and limited himself to a finite amount of time. And each of us has a similar amount of time, some more, some less. So, how do we use it? How do we use it? I've got some figures here that might interest you. Maybe you'd like to have a guess. How much time on average in the UK do you think we spend sleeping and resting per day? Have a guess. Any guesses? 4 hours. We'll pray for you later, Andy. Anything else? 7 hours? Yeah, sleeping and resting. 10. It's 9 hours is the answer on average. Unpaid work, including housework, caring for others, and volunteering. Oh, now this is an average, okay? Some of us are going to spend an awful lot more than others, depending on the stage of life and our parents and all the rest of it. Any guesses per day? 2 hours? 4 hours? Okay. There's a little bit of a win for the ladies here, because women spend more time than men on this, all right? Men, 2 hours, 43 minutes. Women, 3 hours, 37 minutes. Well done, the ladies. I have to concede that one. Watching television and social media combined. This is average, I think that this is adults, I think, in the UK. Watching television and social media. 3 to 4 hours? More or less 4 hours? 3 hours? 3 hours and 2 minutes. Well done. You're pretty close there. Socializing with other people per day, adults. I'll tell you that one, 32 minutes. So we spend 6 times as much time on television and social media as we do socializing face to face. That's quite shocking in a way, isn't it? Certainly quite striking and a bit mental, if you think about it. How did Jesus use the time that he had? How did Jesus use the time? A few verses that give us some information about that, and Jennifer's going to come and read those for us. Where are you, Jennifer? Well done. So, pop you on here. Okay.
So this is Mark chapter 1, verse 29 to 39. And immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever, and immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by demons, and the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, "Everyone is looking for you." And he said to them, "Let us go on to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out." And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons.
Brilliant, thank you. Well done, thanks. Thank you, Jennifer, that's great. I just want to bring out three things from that passage about Jesus and how he used his time. The first is he prioritized time with his Father, with God. So he, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he got up and left his house and went to a solitary place where he prayed. And that wasn't just a one-off. We can see as we read the Gospels and the stories of Jesus, that was his life's practice. Luke tells us that Jesus often withdrew to out-of-the-way places and prayed. Before he was crucified, he spent the whole night praying. Now, I would have spent the whole night fretting and worrying. I'll be honest. No, Jesus was focused on his Father, and he was in prayer. It was a lifetime discipline. When he was a teenager, he went with his parents up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. And they traveled in a group from their town of Nazareth all together, families. And the kids were moving around between different families and with their friends. And I guess teenagers, probably sometimes they were running on ahead and sometimes they were lagging behind and all over. And the weekend passed like that, and at the end of the weekend, the group gathered and they started to return home. And Jesus' parents looked around and suddenly realized he was not there. They lost their son in the city somewhere over the weekend. And so they left the party and they returned to Jerusalem, and I guess they went back to all the places they'd been, everywhere they remembered Jesus going. Maybe if they had friends or relatives there, they went. They looked everywhere, could not find him. Can you imagine the worry and the stress and the anxiety that they're going through? And then eventually they decide, for whatever reason, to go to the temple. And there they find him with the priests and the teachers of the law, engaging in sort of theological debates and discussions and asking difficult questions. And they were a bit cross with him, it's clear as you read the account. But he says to them, "Didn't you know that I would be in my Father's house? Sure, don't you know me well enough, Mum and Dad, to know that that's my priority, is my time with my Father, and this is the only place I could be." It was a lifetime discipline. See, Jesus' work was to bring God and man together, to reconcile us with God, to restore that broken relationship. And so in Corinthians, Paul talks about God who reconciled us to himself through Christ. And so Jesus, given that was his purpose, it was doubly important that he prioritized his relationship in human flesh with his Father, with God. He made that important. And if we want to know God and experience his work in our lives, we have to take him seriously. We have to take the relationship seriously. We have to take all our relationships seriously. That relationships don't work unless you take them seriously and give time and effort and attention. God takes our relationship with him seriously. He took it so seriously that he gave his only son to die and to bring about that reconciliation so that our sin could be wiped out and the power of sin over our lives broken, the power of death over our lives broken, to open the way to eternal life. God did that, And he was in Jesus. And so everything that Jesus suffered, he felt. Everything that Jesus went through, the whole essence of God, everything that could possibly be squashed into human flesh of God himself was in Jesus. Jesus was God, the Son of God. God took his relationship with us really seriously. How seriously do we take it? How much time and attention do we give to our relationship with our Father? Secondly, he focused on a purpose. He said to his disciples, let's go somewhere to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. That is why I have come. He was focused on that which God gave him to do, the purpose for which he has sent. Another time he said to his disciples, we must work the works of him who sent me. He was focused on his purpose and would not be deflected from it. At one time, some Pharisees came to him and said, leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you. And Jesus' response was, he said, go tell that fox, not a very polite way to address the king of the nation. Go tell that fox, he wasn't a very nice man, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day, I will reach my goal. He had a goal, a purpose, and he was focused on that. Now, you and I are unique individuals. There is only one of you. There is no one like you. There never will be. You are genetically unique. The set of genes that you have, your DNA is unique to you. No one else has ever had that set of DNA. Nobody ever will. You are one of a kind. Nobody else had the parents that you had, went to the school that you had the friends that you had, sat in the lessons, the exact lessons that you sat in, learned all the stuff that you've learned, had the experience that you have learned. So by nature and by nurture, you are unique. By nature and by nurture, you are unique. And therefore, you have a unique purpose. Nobody else can live your life. It's unique to you. It's special to you. You have a unique purpose. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? Our purpose is a God-given passion, something that we could get up in the morning for, something that motivates us, something that excites us, something godly that we can focus on. It doesn't have to be mega. You don't have to change the world, plant 1 million churches, or heal the sick and raise the dead. It doesn't have to be something huge or exciting or important. Jackie Kennedy Onassis, people of a certain generation will know her name, American actress, celebrity, married a senator called John F. Kennedy, who went on to become one of the most famous of American presidents. And after he was assassinated, after a while she married a guy called Aristotle Onassis, Greek shipping magnate, one of the richest men in the world. Very famous lady of her generation. One of the best known, most famous, most influential, wealthy women of the 20th century. And on one occasion she said this, and it moves me. She said, if we mess up the raising of our kids, I don't think anything else we do matters very much. Possibly the second most famous, wealthy, important, influential woman of the 20th century, after our own queen probably, thought the most important thing she ever did was being a mum. The most important thing she ever did was being a mum. I think she was right. I think she was right. Our purpose doesn't have to be something mega. It may be something very, very ordinary and down to earth. But what's your purpose? What's your purpose? You might not just have a single purpose. Maybe you've got 2 or 3. Won't be any more than that. Nobody can focus on more than that. And it may not be the same throughout your life. You might achieve a purpose, and then God gives you something else. But what's your purpose right now? And how much time do you give to it? Even under threat of death, Jesus was focused on his purpose. And then thirdly, he was not afraid to say no. So Simon and his companions went to look for him, and they said, "Everyone is looking for you. Jesus, where are you? Where have you been? You were healing people. You were gathering crowds." There was every reason for Jesus to go back with them to where he'd been. He'd been effective. He'd been successful. He'd healed many who had diseases. He drove out demons. He was popular. He was welcome. But he knew when to say no. He knew when to move on because he had a purpose. He wasn't afraid to say, "No, we need to move on. There are other places where I need to go and do my work. That's why I was sent." And he went on, and the next place he went, he healed a leper, and another place he healed a paralyzed man. And then he called a guy called Matthew, who became one of his apostles and who supplied the material for one of the 4 records that we have, one of the Gospels, the eyewitness accounts of Jesus and what he taught and what he did. It was important at that moment to say no. In one of the features of this time, this type of time in which we live, is if you do this, you can't do that. While you're here, sitting, listening to me and all the rest of it, you can't be at home cooking the dinner. You can't be, at the social club chatting with the guys or whatever. When you're doing this, you can't do that. And Jesus understood that. And sometimes we have to say no. Sometimes we have to say no to ourselves, and that can be the hardest thing. I don't think Jesus would spend 3 hours a day on television and social media. Do you? I don't reckon. My weakness is putting things off, personally. I just need to stop procrastinating, but I never get round to it. I need to say no. Now, let's be real. Jesus kept up the pace of his ministry for 3 years, right? He didn't keep it up for 70. That's not physically possible. So we need to bear that in mind. Maybe, as Ollie would say if he was here, lower the bar. Lower the bar. Let's not try and compete with Jesus. It's not likely to end well. Lower the bar. But let's not lower the bar to ground level, right? You don't win the high jump by dropping the bar on the floor and jumping over it. That's not going to impress anybody or achieve very much. But so Jesus prioritized time with his Father. Jesus had a purpose, and he was focused on it, and he knew when to say no. I want to just give maybe Colm, if you could come up and maybe just play something in the background for a little bit. I want to just give some time to reflect and for the Holy Spirit to speak to us, and then we'll go into a time of worship again. And what I'm going to do, there's 3